welcome to another tutorial video. Today's one is kind of doing double embossing, but using an embossing folder plus sprinkling on embossing powder to an embossing folder that we've added some Nuvo products to. So I'm not 100% sure what I'll call this video, but I thought it was a different way of using your embossing folders that's not just emboss it and use a piece of card or do like the letter pressing technique with an embossing folder. It's kind of embossing your folder through a specialty card, but then adding to it as well and giving it some shimmer or using a mousse on it, sprinkling on embossing powders and just creating a different kind of effect. So if you watched my Coral Skies Colour Trend unboxing video, you will have seen a couple of little samples of me using this star embossing folder with some of the Galaxy Blue glacier paste on it, and also using this embossing folder with the Pearlescent cardstock and some of the mousse back over the top. So I really liked how both of them turned out, so I decided to create a couple of cards using those techniques. So for these ones, I have actually used the embossed side of the folder, but for the ones I'm going to show you in the video, I'm going to use the debossed side of the folder, just to show a little bit of difference and the different effects that you can get with them. So it's using an embossing folder onto luxury cardstock, but then going further and using a glacier paste or a Nuvo mousse on top of it, and then adding embossing powder. Firstly some coloured embossing powder, and then some of Francoise's little embossing sprinkles, which give you the little white dots on there as well. So just a different way of using your embossing folders. If you wanted to, you could start with white cardstock or a plain normal cardstock rather than starting with the luxury cardstock as well. I would say maybe go for the same colour cardstock as the mousse or the glacier paste that you're going to use. I think you'll get better results that way. But it doesn't have to be a luxury cardstock. This one is a Pearlescent and this one is one of Tonic's luxury ones. So you might not want to use those more expensive cardstocks for this kind of technique. But as I'd already done those little tester pieces in my Coral Skies Colour Trend video, I thought I would still use them for this video. So first of all, we need to emboss our cardstock. So, on my original ones, I did actually spritz my water first, but I'm not sure I have the patience to wait for it to dry to finish filming this video. So, I'm just going to go without the spritzing of the water, and we'll see if the card cracks or not. The reason why you tend to spritz an embossing folder with a little bit of water is just so that the fibres become like a little bit more looser and they'll sort of squish up and down into the folder a little bit easier. Some cardstocks are brilliant and, you know, it doesn't matter if you spritz them or not and they're perfect for embossing. Other cardstocks struggle a little bit. I do remember when I embossed this one initially, I did have some little white bits showing through, but we are going to add the same colour of glacier paste or mousse on top of them, so it doesn't really matter anyway. And I'm not sure if I want to mix the colours up or use the same colours for the different cards. I think I will stay with the same colours, but we'll just go with the debossed side rather than the embossed side. So this piece doesn't matter at all because it's double-sided pearlescent cardstock, so I can just emboss this and we can use the debossed side of it. It doesn't matter. But this piece, normally I would want the blue side facing up against the embossed impression that's here, but this time I want the blue side facing down against that embossed impression so that this debossed side will accommodate for the other side of the folder pushing into it, so it's going to be embossed into the card. You might have to play around with your folders to figure out which way round is the emboss or the deboss, but the more you use embossing folders, the more that just comes naturally to, you know, logically figure out which side is which. Then, for these embossing folders, I think the sandwich I normally use for them is the white plate and then also a pink plate. So if you're using your full-size tangerine plate, it is the white plate and the pink plate in your tangerine. So you want to run them through hinge side of the folder first as well. So this is the blue cardstock. And let's see how that went. So that's pretty good. I don't think there's any cracking on there. So that didn't actually need any water on it anyway. So that's good. That saved us a step of having to wait for it to dry. I really like the debossed side of that actually. I think that looks really cool as the debossed side. So we've got that one. And then we've got this one as well. And we will run that through hinge side first. Okay, so this one didn't crack either. So the embossed side looks fantastic on this folder, but we're going to work on the debossed side just to show a difference between the original two cards. So we're going to bring out all of our elements to use on these. So first of all, I'm going to use the Galaxy Blue Glacier Paste on the blue one, and also the, what's it called, Bermuda Pink embellishment mousse on the coral coloured one from the Blue Skies colour trend. So we can just open up the pot and take a little bit of the glacier paste out. And then just wipe off my palette knife. Then just literally add a little bit over the top, trying to keep it more on the part that is sticking upwards rather than getting it into the stars. Doesn't matter if you do, but typically when you're using the debossed side, you're trying to get sort of like the flat area rather than those debossed impressions. And this piece of cardstock that I'm working on is bigger than what I want it to be. I am going to cut it down to like exactly the width of the embossing folder, and then a little bit shorter as well. So I thought it's better to work on a larger piece of cardstock, especially when you're using an embossing folder, because I don't know about you, but sometimes if you've cut your piece of card to the perfect size, then you've used an embossing folder on it, sometimes you then go to stick it onto your card blank and you find it's a little bit wonky, or it looks a little bit peculiar, and it's usually because the card has kind of like warped when you've used it in the embossing folder, and so it's not quite the same shape as it used to be, because obviously if you think about it, the cardstocks go up and down in the details of the folder, so that can kind of change the size of your piece of cardstock as well. Okay, so that is the glacier paste on the blue stars. Coming a bit closer for the other one. And then I'll scoop out a little, actually I can just use the mousse straight from the pot, but I'll clean my finger off. So we can just take a little bit of the mousse out of there, tap it on the mat, and then just like gently brush it over the top. I know it is tone on tone, but it just does add something a little bit different to it. So you could skip this step if you wanted to. If you were already using the Pearlescent cardstock, you could definitely skip this step. But if you're working with just a plain coloured cardstock, then I do think this adds a nice touch to it. And using the embossed and debossed side of folders really can make such a difference to the card as well, and we will kind of compare the two of them and see what it sort of looks like having the two different designs next to each other as well. So that is that. I think that's plenty all over there. Okay, so we're back to our clean work surface, and then I've been really enjoying embossing powders recently, and I got some of the ultra thick embossing crystals from Cosmic Shimmer. I'm not sure you can buy these in many places anymore, but there's probably some stockists that still have them. But I got Sunrise Pink, which is a beautiful pink with like a corally kind of mica in it, and then I also got some Midnight Blue, which I'm going to use on the blue one. So for this step, all I'm going to do is just sprinkle, just as you would with Francoise's embossing sprinkles, which we're also going to use after we've embossed this. Just sprinkles in different areas, and it just gives a different look. It's just something a little bit different to do with your embossing powders. You don't have to use ultra thick ones. I just got these ones recently, and I really wanted to play with them, so that's why I'm using these ones. But any pink or blue embossing powder you've got in your stash, or it could be some kind of glitter paste or some glossy paste from Jamie or something, anything you want to. I just thought it's a different kind of way of adding something else to an embossed background, like an embossing folder embossed background. So this is technically double embossing because we've got an embossing folder background and then we're heat embossing on top of that as well. So we want to get our heat tool and we want to heat from underneath. Because we've put loads of those crystals on there and they haven't really got much to grip to other than maybe a tiny bit of the mousse or the glacier paste, we've got to heat from underneath. So I will speed this bit up and put some music over it so you don't have to listen to it. Because we're working on the debossed side this time, this could actually be a technique in itself, working on the debossed side of a folder, and then like if you sprinkle the powder on and shuffle it around, it should fall into those debossed areas because that bit is almost like filled that little star in. So that could be another cool technique just by itself as well. I mean, I know this is a tutorial video showing you the technique of embossing on top of embossing, but I was just experimenting with the debossed side to see how different it looked from the embossed side, but that could actually be a really cool technique, using your embossing powders on the debossed side of a folder. So that's the coral coloured one, and then this is the blue one. You can see how some of the blue stars are full of it as well. But it just gives a different kind of effect on there. And then we're going to go in with some of Francoise's embossing sprinkles as well. You also have to heat these from underneath too, because they are even larger particles than the ultra thick kind of particles. I don't know what they make these out of, these embossing sprinkles, but they're so cool when they melt. Hopefully I can kind of show you that on the camera, but they kind of like melt into little domes and then all of a sudden they melt into like little spheres and then all of a sudden melt down into little domes. It looks so cool, so I'm hoping you'll be able to kind of see that on the camera. It's a little bit difficult for me to show because I can't tip the card because all of the rest of the sprinkles will fall off. But hopefully you'll be able to see it as I heat them. So I'll speed this bit up as well. So now those are heat set, we want to trim them down to the right size to fit onto our card blanks. So I'm going to trim on this first edge, I'm trimming right up to that detail because this folder is literally only just wide enough to be my 3 3/4 inches for my mats on my cards. So I've gone right up against the pattern there, then I'm just going to butt that up against the bar so I can cut this at a proper right angle. Then I can line it up with my measurement and cut the third side, and then I can cut that final side as well. So that is one cut down, and then we're going to do the same thing for this one. Line that first side of the pattern up with where I know the blade cuts. Cut that off straight, line that up against the end, trim that end off, line this up with my measurement, trim that side off, and then trim off the length of it as well. Then I've got all of the bits and pieces ready because I've been showing you how to sort of like stack sentiments and shadow sentiments a lot already, so I thought I'd have everything already ready. I have got a slightly different deer to go on the card as well, and I don't know whether to do this one portrait and this one landscape, but I feel like the candy canes are going to look weird if they're landscape, so we'll keep this one portrait. We've got a slightly different sentiment for this one. The original card, I had gone with thinking of you this festive season, but for this one, I've gone with merriest Christmas to you and yours. And this is actually, they're all part of Sue Wilson's mini expressions, but these aren't actually in the same set. This one actually goes with, I think it says a festive season to you and yours, but I already had a merriest Christmas cut out as well, so that's just 2 of each cut from white stacked on top of each other, and I thought they would work really nicely on this card as well. Then I've got some snowflakes, which is from Sue Wilson's snowflake border piece. I cut quite a few of them, so I've got a bunch of the vellum snowflakes floating around. So I'm just gonna place some of these underneath parts of this sentiment where I think that I want them to go. just placing them wherever I feel like they'll go nicely, because the thing about using vellum snowflakes is that you've got to have somewhere to stick them down. So you can sort of like hide the centre where you've stuck them down with a gemstone or a pearl, or you can hide where you're gluing them down behind your sentiments as well. And then I do have 2 deer to go on this card. So I've got this gorgeous deer. These are Tim Holtz deer that I treated myself to this year, because they're so adorable. So I've got that one there, and then I've also got the little baby one as well, and I thought they could go, because it says to you and yours, I thought that would be quite a nice one. And on the original card, to tie these in, because the rest of the background, everything's kind of got like products on it and stuff, I just brought out the Winter White Glacier Paste just to add a little bit of sparkle. So I'm literally just going to pry that open, get a little bit out on my palette knife, and then just pat that onto the 2 deer die cuts, just to give them a little bit of sparkle. Just do it really like sparingly, not like dousing them in it. You're sort of like tapping it on and then wiping a lot of it off, just so it gives them a little tiny bit of sparkle. You can just sort of catch that in the light. So we've got that one, and then the big one as well. And these are actually 2 stacked together as well, just to give them a little bit more dimension. I've used these in one of my other Advent videos too. I'm not sure whether you've seen that one yet or whether it's still to come, but I have used them in another one because I really adore these little deer. So that's going to be that card, plus I'm going to add some white pearls in when I stick everything down. And then for this card, the original one is landscape, but let's have a look and see if it would work in a portrait fashion, because yeah, that Merry does still work nicely. And this is a mixture of 2 different die sets. So the Merry is a lawn fawn one, which I absolutely adore. I love lawn fawn ones. I have to stop myself from using them because I use them so much. And then the Christmas is when I was ordering some reinkers for my Distress Archivals. I got them from CRaFTi, and I saw some of their little dies. They're gorgeous. They're like turquoise in colour. So that's where the Christmas came from for this one. So I'm going to do the Merry Christmas, and I think I will keep it portrait, this one. And on the original, I had used stars. So this is one of Sue Wilson's DL background dies. This was from her original, or Slimline, from her original Slimline release of dies. And I just love it for using the little stars as embellishments. So I'm going to put a few of the vellum ones. I'm going to use most of the largest ones, I think. I did go for some smaller ones on the original, but you can see the glue behind them because I didn't hide it with a gem on some of them, and I'm not sure it looks as nice. So I'm just going to go with some of the larger ones, and then we'll add more gems scattered around and gems to hold them down as well. So let's stick all of these on first, then we'll put them on the card blanks, then we'll add the gemstones. So we've got our cards on our card blanks, and now it's time for some gems. So on the blue one, I'm going to go with some silver dome gems. So I'm just going to, or pearls probably I should call them. I'm just going to sprinkle some onto my hand and pick a few. So I definitely want to cover the splodges of glue on all of the stars, and then I want a few extras as well. So I think maybe 3 in each position will look nice. So we're going to go 3 there. We need a medium-sized one and a tiny one up there, and then possibly the larger one, and then the tiniest little one over here as well. And then I'll put the rest of those back in the pot. And then we can stick those on before I nudge it and they all fall off. It does kind of cover up the beautifulness of this embossing folder, adding this extra heat embossing on top. But if you've been trying to make all your Christmas cards with the same supplies, it's quite nice to do this kind of thing on top of your embossing folders, because it makes them look different then. And if you were selling your cards on a stall or something, or giving them to all of your friends and they all know each other and might go around each other's houses and see the cards, it wouldn't look like it's the same embossing folder, if you know what I mean. It would look like something different. You're just making it look a little bit more different. So that's that one with the silver gems on there. Then we can go with some white pearls on this one. I have my white pearls separated into their different sizes. So I'm going to go with a couple of, let's go 3 larger ones. And we can put one up there, one over here, and one down here. Then let's go 3 medium-sized ones. And maybe one there, one there, and one there, and then 3 tiny ones. So we could do one in the centre of that snowflake, then maybe one on that little tiny bit of the snowflake, and then one just up there, I think. And we'll stick those into position. There's so many different layouts and sentiments and, you know, all sorts of different accents and things that you can add to your cards doing this technique as well. So you can just take this technique and run with it and create all sorts of different effects, and with all sorts of different folders as well. It doesn't have to be Christmas folders, it can be any kind of folder that you have. It can be leaves, it could be wood, it could be like metal grating, all sorts of different ones you can make look totally different by just adding a little bit of embossing powder on the top of them. So I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial video creating some embossed cards that are like double embossed, because they're embossed with an embossing folder plus heat embossing on top of them as well. So hopefully you've enjoyed this tutorial video. I don't think this one has been too long, as I had a lot of the bits pre-prepared, so hopefully it's a decent length for you, and hopefully you've been enjoying all the CRaFTi Advent videos as well. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again in the next video.